Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics. Welcome to the 2021 Fish Room Tour Part 2. If you have not seen Part 1, I will put that in the description below. Highly recommend you check it out. In this Fish Room Tour, you're going to see all of the tanks that you see behind me, all 28 of them. We've lost some fish in the last year. We've gained some fish. Hope you enjoy the video. Appreciate you being here. So welcome to Part 2 of the Fish Room Tour. This is the side that we're going to be looking at today. If you haven't seen Part 1, that will be in the description below. Highly recommend check it out. There are a lot more fish, a lot more variety. So this is what we're going to be doing today. On this side, we have 28 tanks, I believe. That does not include Joanna's nano wall. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. I thought it would be cool to start with the 150 and kind of work our way around the room. So this is the 150. It's a 4-foot 150. Lots of cool fish. And if you want to learn more about some of the fish featured in this video, I will put species profiles down in the description below. But so many cool fish to look at in this tank. And I know it's a little bit of a strange mix, but it has worked out really well. As you can see, there's really no aggression, no fin nipping, nobody's hiding. And it's just been a great tank to look at. Here we've got the Frontosa. That is actually an African cichlid, and then here we have Geophagus altifrons. This is probably my favorite fish in the fish room. Absolutely love it. And again, it's mixed in really well with this tank. Here you can see the leaf Ctenopoma coming around. Really great fish. It was in the 75 gallon. We moved it here, and it's actually working out much, much better. Now in this tank, we've had to really kind of rely on fake plants because the Severums love to eat pretty much everything we see that's green in the tank, and so the plastic plants have been the way to go. We do have some floating hornwort, and that's really to reduce nitrates, and the Severums like to eat that as well. Here you see some of our crazy clown loaches. There's actually more in this tank, but they were hiding when I was filming. And let's go ahead and take a look at the 275s and the 255s that you see here right next to the 150. These are also some great tanks with some really cool fish. This top 75, I know it looks a little unkept, but it's kind of sort of the look that we go for with some of our tanks. Sometimes the tanks that look a little bit more natural, have a little bit of algae, can be a little bit healthier for fish. So this tank has got a number of fish. You can see the rainbow fish that are swimming around. There are some glass cats in this tank as well. And then you've got these guys, the Geophagus balzani. These are great fish. They're not overly aggressive. We've got a couple males and a couple females in this tank. And like I said, as of right now, they've been getting along. Now this tank also has some driftwood that's got some anubias. You can see some jungle val in the back. There's a little bit of Java fern, Windelov. And the reason why you see a little bit more shimmer in this tank is we're actually running a couple Kessel lights in the 75 gallon. I really love these lights. They're very expensive, but they're also really, really cool. The only filtration that we're running on this tank are a couple of sponge filters. They do a great job. The glass, for the most part, is kept clean because of the bristlenose plecos that we have in the tank. I'm actually thinking about adding a couple Florida flagfish just to clean up the rest of the hair algae. We'll see. That might be something that we do later on. The other fish that we have in here that we're going to get a sneak peek of in a little bit is Rhinogobius henschwensis. It is a freshwater goby. We've got a couple of them, a couple males. We had a larger group, but they're getting pretty old, so we're just down to a couple males in this tank. But really like this tank. It's a very relaxing tank to look at. We've even got a couple of mystery snails roaming around here somewhere as well. Here is the bottom 75 gallon. Again, we just got 2 sponge filters running in this tank. It's a very lightly stocked tank. We have Theraps irregularis. This fish is relatively aggressive. We've had to move some fish out of here, including the leaf Ctenopoma. We've had to move another cichlid out of here, the red-tailed shark, because of him. It's his tank. The other fish that we have in here is Syncrosis bermori. Really cool fish, but it's relatively lightly stocked tank. Now here we have the 55s. This is the top 55 Mbuna tank. There's really 3 different main types of fish going on here. We've got the Pseudotropheus solosi, which are the blue ones, and then the females are yellow. We have the rusty cichlids with more of that purpley brown, and then we have the white knight Ahlis. And this is a tank I enjoy quite a bit. Everybody's getting along well, even though we've got the African cichlids in here. And I know sometimes the aggression can be hard to manage for some, but when you have the right mix of fish and the right setup, things can go fairly well. Love the white knight Ahlis that we have in here. They're fitting in well, nicely. If something changes, we'll deal with that as that happens. The only filtration we have in this tank are 2 sponge filters, and we have 1 Finnick Stingray light. As we've seen in all of our tanks, everything to this point has been, with the exception of the Kessel tank on the 75, everything else has been Finnick Stingray lights that we've been running on these tanks. And this is the bottom 55 gallon. These are the Geophagus tapajos. We have 4 in this tank. Looks like 1 male and 3 females. There is a mix of live and fake plants, mostly because the Geophagus like to dig, and sometimes they'll uproot the plants. So the plants that are in the substrate are fake. Everything that is floating, for the most part, is real. It's mostly hornwort. We also had some bristlenose plecos breed in this tank, so there's about 20 or so bristlenose in here that do a really good job of keeping the tank clean. Again, filtration is just 2 sponge filters. We do have black sand in this tank, and then we are running a single 4-foot Finnick Stingray light. That's what's giving us the illumination, but this is a great tank. These fish do breed for us from time to time, but we have to get the eggs out very, very quickly because of all the bristlenose in there. If we leave them even for a few hours, usually the eggs go missing. Next up, let's take a look at those 420 longs, and on the bottom here, we've got 2 29-gallon tanks. A lot of variety here. There are some tanks here that are going to get redone. This one was just recently redone. This is Nanoluteus splendens. These are great fish that moved out of Joanna's nanowall just because we had some compatibility issues with some of the fish that she has. But I really do love these fish. Absolutely fantastic color. There is a long fin calico bristlenose in here along with some x-ray tetras. So it's kind of an interesting mix. I love this fish tank. Here you can see the nice, beautiful colors. The 20 long right next to it is some hyphen Variatus Ploty. I really like these fish. We started with about 5 or so, I want to say, and I think we're probably up to about 12 to 15 in a pretty short period of time. I like their color. I know it's not cichlids, but we do enjoy all different types of fish. If you look very closely, you will probably see some Neolamprologus shrimp that are swimming around the tank, keeping a check on the green hair algae. Are the smaller ones probably getting eaten by the platies? Most likely, but the larger ones, it seems that they have been left alone for the most part. And this again is another enjoyable tank. Just 1 sponge filter, 1 Finnick Stingray light, and that's what we're looking at here. This is the 20 right below it. These are Lamprologus ocellatus, the gold ocellatus. These are shell dwellers. This group does breed for us, and you can see a lot of the fish are camped out by shells, which is usually a telltale sign that there are eggs, and fairly soon there's going to be fry in there. The only downside with these particular shell dwellers is we usually have to pull the fry for them to survive. This tank is just a planted tank. Believe it or not, there's just some blue dream shrimp in here. We're thinking about either keeping it that way or possibly adding some fish. This is one of my favorite looking tanks. This is actually a Haiger light that I really like. I did a review about it. Just a really great spectrum of light. And now it's just a matter of, okay, what do we want to put in this tank besides the blue dream shrimp? This is the bottom 29, and right now this is a tank that is absolutely going to get redone. It's just housing some tiger endlers, and there's some various types of live bears in here that have been crossbreeding, giving us some hybrids. But this tank is definitely getting redone soon. This is the other 29. The stuff that you see floating down is some food. I had to feed these fish in order to get them to come out. Cryptoheros, nanoluteus. We have a male and 2 females. We have a female goodiad in there that needs to be removed as well. But I absolutely love these fish. Here you're looking at a female. Really awesome color. You can see their pretty blue eyes. And this is a tank that it's a lot of fun to watch these fish interact. We haven't seen a lot of fry from these fish. I suspect that we'll see some from time to time, but they're not surviving, at least in this setup. And so I think what we would have to do is remove one of the females with the male and set up a tank more specifically to get them to breed. But these are absolutely one of my favorite smaller types of cichlids, and they're not overly aggressive, so it makes it really easy to keep. This is a wall of tents. They're mostly just quarantine and grow out tanks, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here and go over each one because it would be not the most fun. But I do want to show you a couple of things that we have going on in this tank that I think are pretty cool. The first one is we've got some of these blue gobies. These are actually for Joanna's nanowall at some point, and they're very interesting little fish with just really cool little personalities. And the other thing is we've got some clown plecos that are also, they're in quarantine. We've got about 10 of them that I think we're going to distribute throughout the fish room in some of the smaller tanks. All right, let's take a look at the low boy. We'll look at these 33 longs and those 40-gallon breeders. Low boys are one of my favorite tanks. We've talked about them. We did a review about these. They're made by ZoomEd. We get that question a lot. They're 4 feet by 24 inches wide by about 10 inches tall. Again, 50 gallons. We have one on the other side that had the Maltese, and then this one really wound up being a black molly breeding tank. We put the black mollies in here originally hoping they would control the green hair algae. They do that to a certain extent, but not really what they like to eat. But I just love the way this tank has turned out with all the plants and the different types of crypts that are going on. We have a Nubius in the center, which is really cool. The substrate that you're looking at is actually the Carib Sea Cichlid mix, believe it or not, one of the types of cichlid mixes. And it doesn't really do a lot for us in our water because our water already has a high pH and is relatively hard. So this is an absolutely fantastic tank. Besides the black mollies, we've got some other really cool fish in here. We've got a couple pencil fish that you'll see swimming around in here, as well as some Apistogramma panduro. We have a pair in here. I don't think a lot of fry, at least the Apisto fry, will survive with all of these mollies, but we do get obviously a lot of molly fry that do survive in this tank, which is pretty awesome. And here you can see the male Apistogramma panduro, and on a darker substrate they look even nicer. They get a little bit darker, a little bit more blue and yellow. Here's the female, and you can see she's got a nice yellow color with the black markings, and so they are doing great in this particular setup. The filtration on this tank consists of just one Seachem Tidal 35 filter. It gives us enough circulation to do a really good job of mechanical flow. I don't really worry about the biological filtration in this tank. In fact, for a very long time, the only thing that was running in this tank was an air stone. We added the filter just to remove some of the particulate matter. Here you see one of our super red bristlenose in this tank as well. Moving on to the 33 longs, this is probably going to be one of the better fish that we have in all the fish room once it matures. These Furcifer Rezebas are one of my bucket list fish that they were absolutely must-have fish. They are extremely small right now, but when they get larger, and they will grow to, the males can get 6 inches or more, the blue that you're just starting to see becomes much, much more pronounced along with the yellow fins, and they get these really nice long trailers on their fins. I'm really looking forward to seeing these fish, what they're going to look like in a year. If we do a fish room tour in the early part of 2022, I think you're going to be seeing a very different fish and quite possibly one of the best looking fish that we have in the fish room. And this is our middle 33 long Lake Tanganyikan setup. There are a number of different types of fish in this tank. It is a tank that has always worked out fairly well for us. We added the flagstone that you can see here in the center. We have 2 sponge filters, just like in all of our 33 longs. We have 1 sponge filter on each side. The lights on the 33 longs are, again, Finnick Stingray lights, and the substrate will vary. Mostly Carib Sea sand in both the top and the middle one, and then the bottom tank that you're going to see in a little bit, that has some Carib Sea gravel in it. But this is a really wonderful tank to look at it. Like I said, these fish have been getting along for quite some time. We have Neolamprologus leleupi in this tank. Here you're looking at Ctenopoma transcriptus, which is a great fish. We actually have a pair in here that every once in a while we'll see fry. But like with most cichlid community tanks, if you don't pull the fry out as soon as you see them, they often go missing. And yes, even though this is a Lake Tanganyikan setup, we do have some plants in here. Pretty much almost all of it is jungle val. We may actually have a couple crypts, but what's cool about the Lake Tanganyikan fish is, at least for African cichlids, they are some of the few fish that aren't going to eat the plants or completely tear them apart usually, and that's why we have them here. So I know it's not necessarily a biotope per se, but at least it adds a little bit of green, and I kind of like the way that looks. The other fish that you're looking at here, Neolamprologus callipterus, this is actually one of the largest shell-dwelling cichlids. The female's on the left, the male is on the right, and the female does spend a lot of time in these shells. The males spend no time in the shells because they're far too big. He decided to take all the shells in the tank and put them over there. This tank here is the bottom 33 long. This is Guianacara stergiosi. These are not African cichlids, but they are wonderful fish. We have 5 of them in this tank, and they have really done a number on this tank. It used to look much nicer. This is a tank that has to get redone, and apparently they don't really appreciate the plants because they've either dug them up or torn them out of the gravel. We had a lot more jungle val in this tank when they first came in, and they have decided to really kind of strip all of the plants out of the tank. So Joanna's going to have her work cut out for her. We're going to have to figure out a biotope for this tank, or at least an aquascape for this tank that is going to be satisfactory to them, not too bad to look at, and then still be able to enjoy the tank. So now we're moving on to our 40 breeders along the same wall. This is a tank really just set up. It's a 40-gallon breeder set up for these Severums. We just have the one sponge filter in here. The male is the one up front. He's got the longer fins, the nicer coloration, a lot larger. The female's in the back. So they're in the top 40, and then in this bottom 40 we have nothing. No, we have some rainbow cichlids. They like to hide a little bit more than I would like, but they do eventually come out. Rainbow cichlids are great fish. They breed relatively easily. This is a group we've had for quite some time. There's about 8 or 10 of them in this tank. We also had some bristlenose plecos breed in this tank, and so we've probably got 15 relatively small bristlenose in this tank. These are great fish. Again, a fish that will not tolerate a lot of plants, and that's why you don't see any in here. And the last tanks we're going to look at are these two 125s. The top one is really another setup for some Lake Tanganyikan fish that has a lot of plants and a little bit of green hair algae as well. So we've got a number of fish in here. You can kind of see some of the gold occelatus, which we saw in the 20-gallon. I'm considering moving those other fish from that 20 long into this tank as well, and then using that tank for something else. But there is a lot going on here. Besides the shell dwellers, we have some rock-dwelling cichlids. We have some calvus. Here is our gold occelatus. Once again, I believe we have about 6 or so in this tank. The lights on this tank are some Fluval 3.0s that we got from Aquarium Co-op a couple years ago. Here you're looking at a couple of different fish. You've got the Ciphochromis on the left. The Congoensis is the fish that's got kind of the stripes, and then the bifrenatus are the ones towards the top. But this is a wonderful tank. We've got a couple sponge filters plus a hang on back on this filter because it is a 125, so we want to make sure that we are getting the proper mechanical filtration in this tank. And all of these fish have gotten along relatively well. We don't see a lot of breeding in this tank, and that's really because, again, it's a community tank, and we do have these guys here, the calvus, which absolutely love to eat small fish. So any fish that would be breeding in this tank, most likely they would be eating them, and we have a group of about 6 of those. Here is the meleagris. This is another shell dweller that is an absolutely fantastic looking fish. So this is the top 125. This bottom 125 is a mess, and it is going to get completely and totally redone as soon as we have the materials that we want for this tank. But we've had some issues with some black beard algae. But we do have is a really awesome fish in this tank, and that is this guy here, the spotted Leporinus. This is a fantastic tank. Sorry about the scratches on the glass. Like I said, this tank is definitely in need of a major rescape, and it's going to get that. It's just a matter of when we can fit it into the schedule. But this is a fish that is probably one of my favorites in the fish room. It's going to get quite a bit larger. It's just in here right now with some Florida flagfish. We've got some white skirt tetras in here as well. And so that's kind of what we have. So that was part 2 of the 2021 fish room tour. If you like this video, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.